Is here. For those that I have not yet met, my name is Jerry Dawes, and I'll be serving as the MC for this evening's event. First, I want to thank you all for being here. You have choices, and you made a decision to be here, and for that, myself and the other organizers of this event, we're very, very thankful. We're going to hear from a series of very dynamic speakers. All of them embody the spirit and work of Marcus Garvey. There's a saying, knowledge is power, and my promise to you is that you leave this event this evening with two things. One, increased knowledge. All of the speakers will provide you with important information that will uplift and empower you. Two, connection with a network of people that will be beneficial to you as you move forward with your life. I encourage you to network with the folks in the room and exchange contact information. You're all invited because you have something to offer and because you bring something to the table. The organizers of this event will also create a database from your registration information to share valuable information for you once this event is over, because we want to keep the momentum and we want to keep the upliftment going after today's event.
Now it's about really getting Black people in the conversation, especially Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean folks there. So in the bio it spoke about my two immigrant parents, but I'm proud to say they're two Jamaican-born parents that I have. And yes, said already, probably said multiple times throughout the day, it's about leaving here with more information, bringing it to more people that look like us, and making sure that we are at the table when these conversations are happening. In the City Council, I have the honor of also serving as the chair for transportation and infrastructure. And so we've been convening hearings around infrastructure, looking at how are we preparing for climate change that exists now. Is no longer future. I remember when we first started talking about it, it was about the future. And now it's here, and we had Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane Ida, we have sinkholes across the city that's taking place. And then, we talk about our carbon footprint and what that all looks like, and how are we making that change now, and how we behave with the environment and do our role. And so I'm excited. Renee Taylor from my team is going to be here in my absence and bring back all the important information, but I encourage you to reach out because I am interested in learning more about the different areas on energy in terms of legislative ideas as well, things we need to be championed in terms of capital investments in the city, and looking forward to working with each of you. So thank you again.
I speak of the great and noble Honorable Marcus Garvey. He taught us to have Black pride, and he also taught us to revere ourselves and our motherland, Africa, from which we all came from. His philosophy and programmatic changes included uplifting ourselves as a people through education and Black economic independence. The red, black, and green flag, he established in 1920 pointed us towards our liberation, our people, and our motherland. The principles of his philosophy today brought us together as an alliance of Black men, where we work together in our community, in our company, to strive for excellence and to give back to those who follow in our footsteps. Like the UNIA African Communities League, we have a diverse group of men from South America, Africa, the Caribbean, and here in America, that we decided we can make a difference by uniting our efforts. Out of that vision, Men of Distinction, or Mod Squad, was established 5 years ago at our company, Con Edison. Our goals are to foster building an organization dedicated to giving back and growing a much needed segment in the energy industry by sharing talents, ideas, and experiences. Over the years, we have held meetings and brought in guest speakers within the past 5 years in person and on Zoom conferences that empowered us to do what we are doing, building a future in the energy field. We have, like I said, a diverse group of engineers, accountants, and multi-talented directors, managers, supervisors, and Mod Squad that keeps the philosophy of Garvey at the forefront of our minds. And that is one God, one aim, and one destiny. I would like to thank the Swift River Center for allowing us to meet here tonight, and I'd be remiss in my duty if I didn't recognize my brother, and my senator from the little Caribbean town of Flatbush. Little Haiti, little Caribbean town, we got all of that over there, right? You know, so I know y'all see my brother, Senator Kevin Parker. Let's give it up for him.
Everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome to Swift River. Who knows where Swift River is? Not someone born in Swift River. Well, Swift River is in Portland, Jamaica, and that's where my family's from, and that's why this place is named Swift River. And it's called a center, not a hall, because it's a place that we want the community to be able to come together. And so with that, I'm so happy to look out and see everyone here. I'm going to try and be a little brief, but I wanted to just speak a little bit about CASONI, the Caribbean American Society of New York. The overarching mission of this organization is to build and cultivate a stronger sense of pride within the Caribbean American community. We have 4 main objectives. The first objective is business. Celebrating, supporting those who have businesses in our community, provide training, and I think it's just so important that as a community we support those who, as they benefit, they give back. Our second objective is in the area of education with a focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is so critically important, especially for our young people. Education, we know, is very important, but at the same time, we want our children to be educated in those areas that are the careers of the future. Well-paying jobs, jobs that I've basically been in for over 30 years, and it'll be the next 30, 100. We need to have our students prepared for these types of careers. It's great to have an education, but even so much better when that education is aligned with the careers of the future. Our third objective is networking, bringing the community together and sharing resources. I know so many people in this audience right now, and if you only knew the resources that we have, and I'm not just talking about capital and money or funds or anything like that. I mean, we have people in this room right now that if we were to all come together, it would be such a game changer. And that's what this organization is about, trying to bring together the community so that we can leverage and be of benefit to each other. Our fourth objective, and I think this is just so critically important, is to engage and be at the table when policies, legislation, regulation are being discussed. I know that oftentimes we look on the news, things happen and there are rallies. I don't want to be at any rally. I think if we're having rallies, that means that we're late to the table. We've got to be at the table when the decisions are being made that ultimately results in those negative consequences. And so as an organization, we really want to make sure that in all aspects of life, when legislation and those things that are going to impact our community, we're at the table to ensure that our best interest is protected and spoken for. So those are the 4 objectives of the organization. Now, why establish an energy affinity group? Energy just touches all aspects of what I just mentioned. It is critically important. If you go to our website, you'll see, and if you can bring that up, CASONI makes a difference. Makes a difference in your family, makes a difference in your career, makes a difference in your community, makes a difference in your state, makes a difference in your health. I just read an article last week that said in areas in the United States, by 2050, temperatures are anticipated to be 125 degrees. Yes, 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you think about that and you think about where we are today, I have children that are going to be in their 30s and 40s. And so when we talk about climate change and legislation and what's happening, we really have to be at the table there. And so this is why we're standing up this Energy Affinity group so that collectively we can utilize the wisdom of so many in this room to make sure that our interest is protected, but also to take advantage of the opportunities, the business opportunities that are coming. Soon you won't be able to buy a fossil-powered vehicle. If you think about that, how many people have plugging stations at their home? We need to make sure that as business is being developed, you know, electricians, you know, you're not going to be able to heat your home in gas by 2030. That's what? 8 years. 8 years? Matt, you know, every time. But if you think about the fact that you've never really fathomed heating your home without natural gas, but this is how quickly the landscape is changing. And so we have to be ready to take advantage and make sure that our community is in the best position possible to grow and protect the next generation. And so with that, I'll just turn it back over to Jerry. I'll be here, willing, ready, and able to talk about the organization and any kind of involvement, because it's not about me, it's about us, and it's about what we can do collectively to make a difference. So thank you, and thank you all for being here.
My name is Lisa Smith. I am the CEO of Ellis Clark Consulting, and as Jerry mentioned, with blah, 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 don't believe the hype, blah, blah, blah. And thank you, Horace, for allowing me to be here on a day like today, celebrating Marcus Garvey, and it was just wonderful to look around the room to see that everyone here embodies his sentiment, and that's great as we celebrate him on this day. Now, the individuals that spoke here before me, I took some notes of some of the things that seriously resonated with me. And one of the things that Horace said was talking about having a seat at the table, which is critically important for us. In my space, in my role, sometimes I don't see a lot of us. And I wish that I would see more of us. So the things that Horace spoke to about preparing the next generation and looking amongst even your co-workers and determining who you might mentor. Horace knows I have a lot of pet peeves. I don't know why he even asked me to speak here, but I'm going to tell you about them a little bit. And one of them might be the people who you work with. I'm going to say it. The people who don't look like us mentor a lot of people who don't look like us. I'm going to say that, right? So we have to be bold enough to mentor the people who look like us and to take care of us. And there is space for that. And I think that organizations that I work with, those that are very forward-thinking through careers, have affinity groups, like Con Ed and other organizations, right? So this is an opportunity for us to really do that. But it's also time to kick it up a notch. It's time to expand it. It's time to look outside of just our utility. I used to work for a utility. The utility is now my client. I worked for PSEG. I supported both Long Island and New Jersey. And what I can say to you is that one of the things that has always resonated with me in the talent acquisition space, in the utility sphere, is that we tend to stay at the utility forever and ever, amen? And there's nothing wrong with that. As Horace mentioned, there's great career there. But it's also time to think about, as we grow this organization, how important it would be to think about your career, your skills, your gifts, your talents, and your abilities outside of the utility. What skills, gifts, and contributions do you have that you might be able to explore other industries, other organizations, with the skill sets that you have today? Utilities offer some unique benefits. A lot of people like to stay there. Even in the union discipline, some very unique benefits, and people like to stay. But there are organizations like Grumman and Honeywell, NASA, Boeing, that are also unique opportunities for us with the skill sets that we all have in the energy space. A lot of them focus on energy. So just something to think about as you're growing your careers. Think about where else you might be able to make the valuable contributions. A superintendent of public works. It is also an opportunity for even the engineers in this room. You guys and ladies work very closely, sometimes with DPW, right? And that person in a role for a municipality is the liaison between the national grids, between PSEG, between Con Ed, but you guys are not out there. But, it's that liaison. It takes an engineering discipline and skill set to make that happen. So again, I just want to encourage you to think about what it is that you do and think about your contributions sometimes outside. Because energy is huge, and its discipline would incorporate that even into this organization as well. I was reading an article in the New York Times, I think it was maybe 2 days ago, and it was funny because it talked about your worker productivity score. Does anyone know what that is? Okay, I'm going to tell you guys a secret in the HR space. You guys are being tracked. You're being monitored. A lot of this even started in 2017 when HR decided to implement in a lot of spaces, and I'm not sure if it's Con Ed also, but Microsoft Teams kind of came around 2017. That little thing where you can communicate with your coworkers internally, kind of pops up on the side. It's a box, and you know how it turns green when you're sitting there, it turns yellow, it turns red when you're not there. Guess what they're looking at? Your worker productivity score.
How many people knew that?
In an energy discipline, have the brightest minds. I've experienced this working amongst you, placing you in job opportunities. So I just want to say, as you think about your career, if you think about being tracked, if you think about experiences that are still going out in the world socially, also I encourage you to think about what we can do collectively, like build our own theme park. Because we can, if we really want to. We're enough. Are we enough?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make certain. You might be saying, Lisa, enough, sit down, enough, right? I just want to read, I don't know if any of you read the book Keys to the Kingdom. It's about Walt Disney's success that all of the other theme parks, I'm sure, strive to model for. And listen to this. Here are their 7 keys to the kingdom, they call it. Our competition is everyone. Pay fantastic attention to detail. Everyone walks the talk and everything walks the talk. Customers are heard through many ears. Reward, recognize, and celebrate. Everyone makes a difference. Those are the 7 pillars that Disney has, which I'm sure these other organizations try to model. I think every day we're all of that. We're enough. Thank you for letting me rant. Thank you for letting me get all the social issues off my chest. And Horace, thank you for allowing me to be here today.
DC, been honored by the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. I could go on and on. Bill, you know, just thank you for all the great stuff that you do. Just recently honored by the folks at the Dominican Day Parade, Brooklyn Borough Hall, just a lot of good stuff. Bill, take it away.
Thank you, Jerry. I want to thank everyone coming out tonight. Thank you for having me here. I want to thank the host. And Horace, where are you? Horace Davis. There you go. This brother and I go back about close to 30 years or something like that. And whenever you've seen Horace, you've seen Jerry Dawes. When you've seen Jerry Dawes, you've seen Wolfson, didn't you? And you know how that routine goes. You know, it's kind of. But I want to also make sure that I acknowledge my 8 9MAC members in the House. We have Rika Johnson, Nadine. We have our national board member, Renee Shaw. Not to leave anyone out. We always make sure that everyone is a part of the American Association of Blacks in Energy. And those that don't know about the organization, it started in 1977 during the Jimmy Carter's administration. Okay, when they was talking about those that's old enough. Remember we had to get gasoline, we had to take out, we had to get on the line and get gasoline in 76, 77. And you had to have a certain license plate number, odd numbers, even numbers, because you can only get gas, and people was running out here stealing license plates and switching license plates to get gas. Okay? Now I'm telling my age, right?
You're dating yourself.
Now, and I'm Brooklyn. That's right. Now, think about it. During the Jimmy Carter's administration, there was no one at the table to talk about energy. Okay, so there was a brother named Clark Watson. I was fortunate enough to meet Clark Watson years ago, and he decided, hey, I need to go back and rally some of these brothers and sisters around energy and talk about this. We are the end users throughout the United States. Think about it. Okay, I've traveled around the country. Detroit, Washington, D.C., Southwest D.C., you name it. Even when I tell some of our 8 national board members, I question them, what are you doing when you go back to your local communities? I get a question mark. Because we're beyond that level. We're talking about our forefathers that started the American Association of Blacks in Energy. And then listen to the sister right here, with her experience, some of us got kind of complacent over the years. And I'm real, Jerry, I told you, we're going to bring him here, I'm going to keep it real. Now, we get complacent and mentally conditioned. Like you said, why don't we, entrepreneurs? Talking about get a job. Well, I spoke at the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, had an event in June, and they had me speak at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and they asked the right one and asked about workforce development. If you're going to be talking about workforce development, let's be truthful. Where are these careers going? Where are they geared towards? I don't see any black and brown people at the table around that discussion. I live right here in Brooklyn, New York, and I don't see our major energy companies really pushing in our certain communities. I don't see it. Not to the level where it should be. And then a lot of our folks that are in position as in these careers and these companies making these other folks rich, okay, are not pulling the other folks up and mentoring them, as you mentioned earlier. So that hurts a little. So some of the things I give back to the community because I want to, not because I have to. I can go to my house, close the door, and look at the game also, and watch my wife, make me a sandwich or something. But the thing about it is, I'm out there like this brother told my son back there, George Suggs at On Fun Clothing. Michael Jones Bay mentioned to him earlier. He said, your father may not have been home a lot of nights, but he wasn't outside just killing time. I was out there in the streets giving back, serving on community board 8 Central Brooklyn, 2 terms. 2 boards of senior citizen buildings. There's different things I could do with my time. And I found that to be very interesting. Marcus Garvey, let's keep it real, y'all. He wasn't just talking about going back to Jamaica. Marcus Garvey was trying to take us back to Africa. He knew Jamaica and the West Indies was colonized. And then we, as Caribbean brothers and sisters, like Jerry mentioned, I was honored by the Dominican community last week. And they didn't say, where you from? Not one time someone said, where you from? I can't stand that. Some people say, you look Dominican. What does Dominican look like? All right? Now, and the brothers from the Caribbean, my wife, my in-laws are from Trinidad, and I'm from North Carolina. You don't know because we have a triangular trade system. We don't know really where our ancestry comes from. But Marcus Garvey was trying to take us back to the motherland, and he had them old ships out there trying to crank them up. Dr. Hendricks said years ago that he don't think those ships would have probably made it across the Atlantic Ocean, but he was trying. Marcus Garvey wasn't really geared towards going back to Trinidad, going back to Jamaica, going back to anywhere in the Caribbean. He was trying to take us back to Africa. But he had another vision. He just didn't have a sight, he had a vision. And to your point earlier, if we only had our own and start to build our own, that's where we're going to start to become a force to be reckoned with on a global scale. Because racism is a global system. And as African Americans, and we all are African American in this room. You're an American, you're African American. We are a threat to that dominating race that's basically trying to create a genocide against you in a sophisticated manner. We're scared to walk in a hallway and speak to one another in corporate America. We put our head down on the elevator, can't even say good morning. But then we come out here and we want to preach to the choir, so to speak. No, we all know the real deal. That is, we have to come together in some shape or form. American Association of Blacks in Energy, the New York Metropolitan Area Chapter, former Northeast Regional Director. I think I've put a lot of work in, and I'll continue to put work in for my community. And I will still do that. Jerry served on the national board itself many years, and we have a committee together today. Can I tell them about the committee? Sure. Something? Sure.
Matter of fact, we have one of our mentees in the audience, someone who just won the scholarship for Abe.
All right, stand up, sister. Stand up. Give her a round. Jerry know the importance, and a lot of our Abe non-MAG members know the importance. I mean, we have Rika Johnson that just recently chaired the National Scholarship Committee planned a luncheon that Con Edison sponsors on a national level. But you won the local one, right?
And national.
And national. Oh my God. Give it up. This is real work. When we can turn around and look at beautiful young women like her.
Computer science, Swiss College,
Right.
So she's here for a reason. So she is the next generation that we've been building and mentoring, correct?
Right, so we offer scholarships out every year. On a local level, okay, non-MAG chapter consists of Con Edison and National Grid members, mainly mostly Con Edison, have a larger number, but we've been around for 35 years. The organization been in existence for 45 years. The New York chapter been in existence for 35 years. And we've been giving out scholarships every year. Jerry used to have the numbers, I think it's close to $2 million. He's been calculating every year how much money we've been giving out. We also have what you call a Summit Energy Academy. I want you all to go back and Google it, cprogram.org. It's the NIMAC Summit Energy Academy where we bring in middle school and high school students and introduce them to the energy sector. We give them tours and so on. Okay. Beyond that, we have a tutoring program. So you don't think we ever sleep. I don't think I ever sleep. My wife wake up in the morning, she's out, I left in the same spot. But we have a tutoring program that help young people that's younger than you to prepare for SAT and Regents exams. That's taking corporate money, bringing it back to our community, and putting it to use. Because again, we are the end users, so we're paying them rates out there, bring some of the money back to the community. Am I lying?
No.
Anyway, I'm gonna let you guys enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very, very much for letting me let a little off my chest. And thank you for having me, and I wish all the best. Keep up the good work and bring us together more often. Because all of us, Marcus Garvey said, we was trying to get back to Africa. He wasn't trying to go back to the Caribbean where he knew he was colonialized. And I talk to my Haitian brothers, my Dominican brothers about that. They share the same island. Let's separate them, a barbed wire fence. And then they fight their old slave master wars when you got the French don't like the Spanish. That's a European thing. Those are brothers from Africa, the Maroons, right there. And the Maroons is right here in North America too, in Tennessee. A lot of folks don't know that. It wasn't just in Jamaica. It wasn't just in Africa. But I want you all to take heed that I got it for the heart here. You don't want to hear me talk and speak the truth. Don't bring me out.
Did promise information. All right, is Noel here? Yes, all right. So I got another brother who is just very dynamic.
And brothers from Brookhaven National Lab. And today, as a result of that, we are going to be having, probably soon, in the next year and a half, a deployment for zero carbon emission in Connecticut from their scheme. And what is this they're going to look at? They're going to take the excess energy from the wind farm, take that energy and split water into oxygen and hydrogen. And take the hydrogen and use it as fuel to create steam. Think about that, folks. You know, it's a dream. I remember, and I'll date myself now. How many of you all remember the Jetsons? Jetsons, right? Yes. I remember when I was looking at the Jetsons, I said, no way I could be talking to people over television. What we're doing today? What are we doing today? We're holding meetings through a television. And you could even do this and talk to someone on your phone, on your watch. So, I come back to relevancy. We need to think about the next generation. And we need to think about the next generation in ways that are outside the school and very, very innovative. We cannot do the same old, folks. Brookhaven National Lab is 75 years old this year. Yet we still have the same diversity issues. We have 26% female, and we have 13% underrepresented minorities at Brookhaven National Lab. 5 years ago, I couldn't find an African American scientist at Vienna. We have over 1,000 engineers and scientists at Vienna. I couldn't find an African American female scientist at Vienna. 5 years later, we have 3. Because we started working and being intentional and deliberate with what it is we're doing. It may not sound like much. Let me tell you, now I have 3. And we started to create the critical mass that is necessary to draw people. But it's not only the diversity piece, and diversity, folks, diversity is not just black people. Diversity is everyone. And let's embrace that. It's everyone. But what happens is representation matters when you intersect diversity and equity. Representation matters. And that is when we can create a sense of belonging, an environment where we can keep people and not have a revolving door. So as we move forward, let us challenge ourselves. I heard a word earlier on, and it resonated with me. It was game changer. How many of us tonight will leave here being a game changer? How many of us will dig deep and recognize that you matter to be a game changer? And are you going to walk the walk, or are we going to continue talking? Because yes, we need to be at the table, but we need to be at our table. So it's about thinking bigger. Start thinking bigger. We may not realize it today, but our kids will. Climate change is real. Don't go to Florida to live, folks. Go to the mountains and buy where you can get good land. Think about it. I just came this weekend. I was in Sad Harbor, and they celebrated, community celebrated 75 years. This African American woman from Brooklyn, about 50 years ago, 60 years ago, was walking through some tracks in Sad Harbor, and she loved the land. decided to find out who are the owners, went and purchased the land through some friends who she had in Brooklyn. Today it is a thriving community of African Americans in Sag Harbor, which is just on the outskirts of the Hamptons. We have to create our own. And yes, it's important about thinking of going back. But where is home, folks?
Wherever you
Home is where the heart is. And if we're living here, you better make here your home. And you better create it in such a way that we are all striving together. So I'll leave you with some words. Relevancy. More important, you matter. Thank you.
But it's really my pleasure and honor to be here as Swift River, and wherever Horace calls, I'm there. I'm trying to figure out why I'm not one of the distinguished black men, but we'll talk about that later. How y'all ain't, yeah, left my brother. Okay, I left my brother out. But there's so much, obviously between me being chair of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee in the State Senate, and actually also being an Africana Studies professor, and like, Marcus Garvey, is really like one of my heroes. I'm gonna tell you a quick thing that draws a thread in the understanding about why we're here today and why we're here today on the celebration of Garvey and what connects us today. Garvey is one of the fathers of Pan-Africanism, right? And Pan-Africanism is really a nationalist movement. When you talk about nationalism, this is one of my specialties as an African Studies professor. It's really about nation building. Right, and that notion of nation building in this time is not a literal nation. At some point, there were groups that were literally trying to build nations, right? At the time that Garvey was around, he was literally involved in, like, people talk about, going back to Africa, and it sounds crazy, but he wasn't the only one. This is right before they partitioned, when Europe partitioned Africa. This is at the same time that actually America created 2 colonies in Africa. People don't know that Liberia and Sierra Leone were both attempts for the U.S. to colonize Africa, right? And so what Garvey was doing was not, some pie in the sky, like unheard of, like why is he talking about that, right? This was part of what was going on in that moment, right? And now we're in a similar moment in which we need to be thinking about ourselves as global people in the way that Malcolm X had us to think about, right? Is that, they call us minorities, and you allow yourself to be called that if you look at yourself maybe in American context, but if you look at yourself in a global context, right, you're not minorities, right? In fact, they're minorities, right? Don't have me up here talking, I got an election, I'm not gonna have to do my job talking radical with y'all out in Queens. But the work of Marcus Messiah Garvey is just really amazing, and it's really something, if you haven't really looked into it, you should. Much of what we understand about the development of African institutions comes from Garvey, right, and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the largest movement of African people literally in the history of the world, right, even to this moment, right. First thing that he actually created was the African Orthodox Church, right, and then one of the other things he created early on was Black Star News, right, and you have no Harlem Renaissance without Garvey, right, so people like Claude McKay and Zora Neale Hurston, right, who's, by the way, the person who inspired Alice Walker to write The Color Purple, right, started out writing for Garvey in the Black Star News, right? And I want to talk really quickly about bow ties, right? We saw the brother with the bow tie on. I started to put one on today too, and everything like this. Yeah, I usually do. And I actually started wearing bow ties because of Garvey, right? And people are like, what's up with the bow ties? I'm like, it's about black conservatism. Right, and black conservatism is not white conservatism. White conservatism is about, a regressive age and oppressing everybody who's not a white man. Black conservatism is about reconstructing our culture, right? It's like, really about what's being talked about here in terms of conserving who we are as people of African descent and understanding that we have more alike than we have differences, right? And you heard my brother, Bill Shuggs talk about that in the context of Hispaniola, the island of Hispaniola in which Dominican Republic and Haiti both sit, right? But we have all of these conflicts, right? Like, although I'm not African American, I'm not Caribbean, I do represent the largest concentration of Caribbean immigrants outside of the Caribbean in the world, right? And you find like, you know, the largest Bayesian population is in my community, right? The largest Panamanian community is in my community, and the largest concentration of Haitian people outside of Haiti, larger number in Florida, larger concentration in Brooklyn, right? And so, you know, you see all of these things that go on, you know, between, you know, people from different islands, right? Like the people in Barbados and Trinidad fighting over flying fish, and they don't even control the fish. Stop playing with me, like, what we doing here, all right? And Garvey very much understood, even at his time in the early 1900s, that we were either going to stand together or we were going to hang separately, right? And he actually comes to the U.S. to be his mentor, which was who? Who's the person he looked up to? That's right, Booker T. Washington, right? And Booker T. Washington was really one of I call him the grandfather of black nationalism, because there was no black nationalism at the moment. As we talk about Pan-Africanism and nationalism, you talk about Garvey in that level, that is really Booker T. Washington, which is, you know, is the beginning of that, right? Where he literally brings students together and literally builds Tuskegee University. Like physically built. When we talk about building institutions, typically we talk about metaphorically. We talk about bringing people together and it happens and da-da-da. No, he literally brought, and the students built the school. Like literally built the buildings, right? And is Garvey looking at that saying, that's what we need to be. That we need to be in a place where, as you heard Sister Lisa talking about, owning our own amusement parks. They're not treating you right at the white amusement parks. They shouldn't be. Let's build our own. Right? And so that's what they were doing. That's what, you know, Booker T. Washington was doing. Booker T. Washington wore a bow tie. And so Garvey started wearing bow ties. Y'all didn't know that, right? And then who was a sergeant in Garvey's army? Because Garvey was like, we have to have a real nation. Nations have armies. So he literally developed an army. Right? One of the people who was a sergeant in his army was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Which is how Elijah Muhammad started wearing bow ties. Which is why the Brothers of the Nation of Islam wear bow ties to this day. And that notion of the bow tie is, I'm using it as a, you know, not just a fashion trend, but was a philosophical connection between generations to understanding this notion of owning our own, being our own people, fighting for ourselves, and making sure that even in places in which we're not welcome, that we carve out a space and a place for ourselves, both economically, socially, and politically. Right? And so, as a child of that understanding, when I came to the New York State Senate almost 20 years ago, I was clear that I needed to do things different in my generation than they had done in the past. And let me just certainly shout out somebody like Al Van, who recently passed away, who was a mentor and somebody who guided me and shepherded the notion of black politics and our understanding. And let me say, some of you are like, oh, I'm not into this political stuff. But you shouldn't be into political stuff unless you don't pay taxes. Right? If you pay taxes, you should be into the political stuff, because we spending your money. That's all day what we do. All day. Right? And so I didn't come in, and when I came to the state senate, I was like, okay, I want to be in all of these things around money, right? I used to have worked for the state, even in politics, I had always worked on the money side, right? I worked for now the Empire State Development Corporation, which used to be at the time I worked there. Remember this, Mike, the Urban Development Corporation? Yes. Right, then became the Empire State Development Corporation. I worked for Carl McCall, who again was the state controller, first African-American elected statewide. People didn't realize this about Carl when he was elected. Do you know that the state controller in New York, whoever it is the single largest investor in the world? People don't realize that. The New York State Common Retirement Fund is what we call is a sole trusteeship, which means they make different. Now, they make decisions alone. CalPERS, which is the largest pension fund in the country, is a larger fund, but it's made decisions by a board, right? The state controller is a sole trustee. There's nobody else who makes that much money. The organization with the largest bonding authority in the world is DASNY, the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York. This is your money that people are spending, unless you're not paying taxes. Anybody here not paying taxes? No, don't raise your hand, because I see something, I gotta say something. Right? But we're talking about large amount. Like, we're not in a place where we're in deficit. We're in a place where there's a lot of money. So having, worked in the Empire State Development Corporation, worked for Carl McCall, who's the single largest investor in the world, had worked on Wall Street for the chairman of Payne Webber. Some of y'all don't remember Payne Webber. You're too young for that. Now it's UBS, right? Remember, thank you, Payne Webber. Right? So I used to work for the chairman and the president of Payne Webber. And so we're talking about very large amounts of money. I'm gonna give you a quick story about how money and energy intersect. So in 1999, I was working for Carl. I was his deputy director of government affairs. So I used to run the whole entire New York office. And we had a blackout. Some of you remember this? We had a blackout in half of the city. And the lights were really slow to come up in black communities, per usual, right? And particularly like Harlem up to like Washington Heights was all dark. So Sharpton calls me, and Sharpton's like, "Yo, Kevin, we got to get the control up here. We having a press conference, and we're gonna demand that these crackers put these lights back on for black people, right?" And so I was like, "Yes, Reverend Sharpton, let me get on there." I go into the controller. I'm like, "Yo, controller, they up there, they oppressing black people. They got their lights out. They still ain't put their lights on. Let's get something done." I was like, "We have a press conference. Let's go to this press conference. Let's get it." And so Carl looked at me. He's like, "Call in Ellen." Ellen is a person who's in charge of what we call investor relations. So Ellen comes in, and Ellen says, "How many shares of Con Ed do we own?" She's like, "I don't know, a lot." She's like, "I'll be right back." She come back in 5 minutes. She's like, "We own quadrillion billion, all the money in the world. Like, we own all of the shares, right?" And what I found out that day is that the New York State Common Retirement Fund is the largest single investor in Con Ed. You own the utility. And so he was like, "Ellen, call the chairman and then let's have a meeting." So this was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like on a Monday or Tuesday. The next morning, 9 a.m., the president, the chair of the board, 3 board members, and like 2 people in charge of operations were sitting in our conference room waiting for us. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, the lights were back on. Right? That's where it intersects. Right? And that's why you don't see me at protests. Because as a state senator, I'm involved. Who am I protesting? I'm the damn government. Right? Especially now, like with Eric, you think I need to protest Eric? I'm sorry, Mayor Adams? I sat next to Eric for 6 years on the floor of the state senate, like that's my dude. Right? Like, when you're in government, this is what we do. We all know each other, right? Like the reason why you elect me is to represent you, right? And the relationships are critically important. And you have now, people have talked about Wakanda, and you now, because of the way you folks have operated, you have Wakanda right here in the state of New York. I want y'all to understand your power, right? I don't want this to be a deficit conversation. I want you to understand you've already done much of what you already thought you needed to do.
It is that type of vision and audacity that we need. It's that type of vision and audacity that embodies the spirit of Marcus Garvey. Now, isn't that right? Yep. Right? So welcome to the house of Horace Davis. He's built this place, right? Through sweat and perseverance, right? He's building an institution. He physically built this place. I have pictures of Horace and Jerry building this place. They own this place. We could have done this at Forestry Place at our corporate office, but as a really reminder of ownership in the spirit of Marcus Garvey. You saw the picture of Julius Garvey up on the screen, right? That's because we had that connection, right? That spirit of men of distinction, excellence at work, at home first, right? Then at work, to be able to have maximum impact in community. And we now are expanding it to women like Rika Johnson and other brothers and sisters, right? This is going to be co-ed, absolutely. But listen, the hour is long. I have more things to say. I just really wanted to pledge my public commitment to Brother Horace, to Jerry Dawes, right? To this vision, making it real, right? My telephone number is 212-460-4812. I want to be held accountable to this, right? This is real. Good night.
All right, there is food on the other side, there's refreshments over here. Please network with each other. A lot of very talented people in the room. We're planning some other events. You know, we're going to keep in touch. But thank you for coming out. And have a good night, and get home safe.